The Egyptian deities were worshipped by the Egyptians from way back in the prehistoric era, which spanned from the earliest human settlement to the beginning of early dynasty period. These deities represent natural forces and phenomena, and the Egyptians supported and appeased them through offerings and rituals so that these forces continue to function according to Maat or the divine order. After the founding of the Egyptian state around 3100 BC, the authority to perform these tasks were controlled by the pharaoh, who claimed to be God's representative and managed the temples where the rituals were carried out. Let's look at some of the major gods or deities in these mythologies. Subscribe if you haven't, and let's get started. Ra is the Egyptian deity of the sun. By the 5th dynasty, in the 25th and 24th century BC, he had become one of the most important gods in the ancient Egyptian religion, identified primarily with the noonday sun. Ra ruled in all parts of the created world: the sky, the earth, the underworld. He was believed to have ruled as the first pharaoh in ancient Egypt. He was the god of the sun, order, kings, and the sky. Ra was portrayed as a falcon and shared characteristics with the sky god Horus. At times, the two deities were merged as Ra Horkethi, Ra, who is Horus of the two horizons. In the New Kingdom, when the god Amun rose to prominence, he was fused with Ra as Amun-Ra. All forms of life were believed to have been created by Ra. In some accounts, humans were created from Ra's tear and sweat. Hence, the Egyptians called themselves the cattle of Ra. In the myth of the celestial cow, it is recounted how humankind plotted against Ra and how he sent his eye as the goddess Sekhmet to punish them. According to Egyptian myth, when Ra became too old and weary to reign on earth, he relinquished and went to the sky. As the sun god, one of his duties was to carry the sun across the sky on his solar vessel to light the day. But when the sun set and twilight came, he and his vessel passed through the Akhet, the horizon in the west, and traveled to the underworld. At times, the horizon is described as a gate or door that leads to the Duat. There, he would have to sail on the subterrestrial Nile and cross through the 12 gates. The sun or Ra represented life, warmth, and growth. Since the people regarded Ra as a principal god, creator of the universe and the source of light, he had a strong influence on them, which led him to being one of the most worshipped of all the Egyptian gods and even considered king of the gods. Osiris is the god of fertility, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation. In ancient Egyptian religion, he was classically depicted as a green-skinned deity with a pharaoh's beard, partially mummy-wrapped at the legs, wearing a distinctive Atef crown, and holding a symbolic crook and flail. He was one of the first to be associated with a mummy wrap. When his brother Set cut him up into pieces after killing him, Osiris's wife found all the pieces and wrapped his body up, enabling him to return to life. Osiris was widely worshipped until the decline of ancient Egyptian religion during the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire. Osiris was the judge and lord of the dead and the underworld, the lord of silence and Khenti Amentiu, meaning foremost of the Westerners. In the Old Kingdom, from 2686 to 2181 BC, the pharaoh was considered a son of Ra. After Osiris's death, he ascended to join Ra in the sky. After the spread of his cult, however, the kings of Egypt were associated with Osiris in death. Through the hope of new life after death, Osiris began to be associated with the cycles in nature, in particular the sprouting of vegetation and the annual flooding of the Nile River, as well as the heliacal rising of Orion and Sirius at the start of the new year. He became the sovereign that granted all life, he who is permanently benign and youthful. The first evidence of the worship of Osiris is from the middle of the 5th dynasty of Egypt in the 25th century BC. Although it is likely that he was worshipped much earlier, the Khenti Amentiu epithet dates to at least the 1st dynasty. Some Egyptologists believe the Osiris mythos may have originated in a former living ruler, possibly a shepherd, who lived in pre-dynastic times from 5500 to 3100 BC in the Nile Delta, whose beneficial rule led him to being revered as a god. Anubis is the god of funerary rites, protector of graves, and the guide to the underworld. In ancient Egyptian religion, usually depicted as a canine or man with a canine head. Like many ancient Egyptian deities, Anubis assumed different roles in various contexts. Depicted as a protector of graves as early as the First Dynasty from 3100 to 2890 BC, by the Middle Kingdom from 2055 to 1650 BC, he was replaced by Osiris in his role as the Lord of the Underworld. One of his prominent roles was as a god who ushered souls into the afterlife. He attended the weighing scales during the weighing of the heart, in which it was determined whether a soul would be allowed to enter the realm of the dead. Anubis is one of the most frequently depicted and mentioned gods in the Egyptian pantheon. However, no relevant myth involved him. Anubis was depicted in black, a color that symbolizes regeneration, life, the soil of the Nile River, and the discoloration of the corpse. Anubis is associated with his brother, Wepawat, another Egyptian god portrayed with a dog's head or in a canine form, but with grey or white fur. Historians assume that the two figures were eventually combined. His daughter is the serpent goddess Quebec. In Egypt's early dynasty period, from 3100 to 2686 BC, Anubis was portrayed in full animal form, with a jackal head and body. A jackal god, probably Anubis, is depicted in stone inscriptions from the reign of Hor-Ah, Jer, and other pharaohs of the First Dynasty. Since pre-dynastic Egypt, when the dead were buried in shallow graves, jackal had been strongly associated with cemeteries because they were scavengers which uncovered human bodies and ate their flesh. In the spirit of fighting like with like, a jackal was chosen to protect the dead because a common problem must have been the digging up of bodies shortly after burial by jackals and other wild dogs which lived on the margins of the cultivation. In the Old Kingdom, Anubis was the most important god of the dead. He was replaced in that role by Osiris during the Middle Kingdom. In the Roman era, which started in 30 BC, tomb paintings depict him holding the hand of deceased person to guide them to Osiris. In the Ptolemaic period, from 350 to 30 BC, when Egypt became a Hellenistic kingdom ruled by Greek pharaohs, Anubis was merged with the Greek god Hermes, becoming Hermanubis. The two gods were considered similar because they both guided souls to the afterlife. Horus is one of the most significant ancient Egyptian deities who serve many functions, most notably as god of kingship, healing, protection, the sky, and the sun. He was worshipped from at least the late prehistoric Egypt until the Ptolemaic kingdom and Roman Egypt. Different forms of Horus are recorded in history, and these are treated as distinct gods by Egyptologists. He was most often depicted as a falcon or a man with a falcon head. The earliest recorded form of Horus is the tutelary deity of Nekhen in Upper Egypt, who is the first known national god, specifically related to the ruling pharaoh, who in time came to be regarded as a manifestation of Horus in life and Osiris in death. A most commonly encountered family relationship describes Horus as the son of Isis and Osiris, and he plays a key role in the Osiris myth as Osiris's heir and the rival to Set, the murderer and brother of Osiris. In another tradition, Hathor is regarded as his mother and sometimes as his wife. The pharaoh was associated with many specific deities. He was identified directly with Horus, who represented kingship itself and was seen as a protector of the pharaoh, and he was seen as the son of Ra, who ruled and regulated nature as the pharaoh ruled and regulated society. The pyramid texts describe the nature of the pharaoh in different characters as both Horus and Osiris. The pharaoh as Horus in life became the pharaoh as Osiris in death, where he was united with the other gods. In one tale, Horus is born to the goddess Isis after she retrieved all the dismembered body parts of her murdered husband Osiris and used her magical powers to resurrect him to conceive her son. After becoming pregnant with Horus, Isis fled to the Nile Delta marshlands to hide from her brother Set, who jealously killed Osiris and who she knew would want to kill their son. There, Isis bore a divine son, Horus. Set is a god of deserts, storm, disorder, violence, and foreigners in ancient Egyptian religion. Set has a positive role where he accompanies Ra on his bark to repel Apep, the serpent of chaos. Set had a vital role as a reconciled combatant. He was lord of the Red Land, the desert, where he was the balance to Horus's role as the lord of the Black Land, the fertile land. In the Osiris myth, the most important Egyptian myth, Set is portrayed as the usurper who murdered and mutilated his own brother, Osiris. Osiris' sister/wife, Isis, resembled his corpse and resurrected her dead brother/husband. The resurrection lasted long enough to conceive his son and their heir, Horus. Horus sought revenge upon Seth, and many of the Egyptian myths describe their conflict. In ancient Egyptian astronomy, Seth was commonly associated with the planet Mercury. Since he is related to the west of the Nile, which is the Sahara, he is sometimes associated with a lesser deity, god of the desert. In art, Set is usually depicted as an enigmatic creature referred to by Egyptologists as the Set animal, a beast not identified with any known animal, although it could be seen as resembling an aardvark, an African dog, a donkey, a hyena, a jackal, a pig, an antelope, or a giraffe. An important element of Set's mythology was his conflict with his brother or nephew, Horus, for the throne of Egypt. The rivalry of Horus and Set is portrayed in two contrasting ways. Both perspectives appear as early as the pyramid texts, the earliest source of the myth. And some spells from these texts, Horus is the son of Osiris and nephew of Set, and the murder of Osiris is the major impetus for the conflict. The other tradition depicts Horus and Set as brothers. This incongruity persists in many of the subsequent sources, where the two gods may be called brothers, or uncle and nephew at different points in the text. The divine struggle involves many episodes. Many writings describe the two gods appealing to various other deities to arbitrate the dispute and compete in different types of contests, such as racing in boats or fighting each other in the form of hippopotami to determine a victor. In this account, Horus repeatedly defeats Set and is supported by most of the other deities. Yet the dispute drags on for 80 years, largely because the judge, the creator god, favors Set. The conflict is characterized as a great battle involving the two deities' assembled followers. The strife in the divine realm extends beyond the two combatants. At one point, Isis attempts to harpoon Set as he is locked in combat with her son, but she strikes Horus instead, who then cuts off her head in a fit of rage. Thoth replaces Isis's head with that of a cow. The story gives a mythical origin for the cow horn headdress that Isis commonly wears. These are the 5 of the major gods in Egypt mythology. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you like other mythologies and lores, you can watch some of my other videos as well.